Thanks for joining me. It's Tim Rickson from British Boxing News. This video is going to be looking at the forthcoming fight between Joshua Buatsi and Dan Azeez that takes place on October the 21st. That's going down at Greenwich, the O2 Arena in London. So that's going to be on a Sky Sports show presented by Boxer, which will be free to view, so that's going to be a good one for fight fans who obviously subscribe to Sky Sports. So let's get straight into it. So this pair, there's a lot of similarities and a lot of disparities at the same time. They started at the same South Boxing London club together. They then went completely separate ways. Joshua Buatsi notably got onto the Team GB squad. Went on to get an Olympic bronze medal at the Rio 2016 Games. For Dan Azeez, it was different. I don't know if he really was that regular, fighting that often in the amateurs, because I think he only clocked up about 60 amateur fights, and I think most of them was when he was studying at university, so from maybe the age of late teens, early 20s. But he won the Southern Counties or South of England amateur championships. He won them on 3 occasions. So he had his success in his own right, but obviously the pair starting out together at the same amateur club, one's trajectory went skyrocketed upwards and the other one's trajectory was upwards, but not in the same stratosphere as Joshua Buatsi's. So so there's similarities there. They started at the same time, started together, but then had obviously different successes in the amateur code. So as pros, again, those disparities continued from the amateur circuit to the pro game. Joshua Buatsi kicking his career off at the O2 Arena, fighting on anti-Joshua undercards. He even went to Madison Square Garden and fought on Anthony Joshua's disastrous US debut against Andy Ruiz Jr. He fought on the undercard at Madison Square Garden. So he's been at the mecca of boxing. He's been at the biggest capacity arenas in the UK and in America as well. While he was doing that, Dan Azeez, I think they both turned pro in 2017, so it's both on the circuit at the same time in the paid game. But Dan Azeez was fighting at the Brentwood Centre. They got a capacity of about 2,000 people if they even fill it up for fights. He also fought the York Hall a handful of times all through his career. But I think his first 10 fights, he fought at the Brentwood Centre 3 times, York Hall 5 or 6 times, and I think his 9th or 10th fight was at the O2, which is where he picked up his first professional title, the Southern Area Championship against Charlie Duffield. So that's where his story kind of really begins, really, because he sort of did his time on the small hall shows with no TV cameras. He obviously worked hard, progressed with every fight, won his Southern Area title in a fight that everyone probably considered to be 50-50 at the time with Charlie Duffield. Then he went on to win English, defended it 2 or 3 times, then went on to British, and Commonwealth, then European. He's won every single belt. The only one that's eluding him now, which he's working towards, is the world. So if he does that, he's completed the set, and he's going to go down as one of our British boxers' best talents. He certainly is at the moment, Dan Azeez. The way he's come up from that level of fighting at 2,000 seater stadiums to now headlining the O2 with 4 belts. Southern Area, English, British, Commonwealth, European, 5 belts behind him. It's, and he's actually, obviously BoxRec ain't nothing to go by in terms of rankings, but he is number 1 on BoxRec in the light heavyweights in the UK, and Josh Buatsi is number 2. So for him to start with his beginnings, very humble and modest, compared to the superstar beginnings that Joshua Buatsi has, he's now almost overtaken him. I think in the rankings, the world rankings, it might be the other way round. I think I know that Joshua Buatsi is WBC 2, WBA and WBO number 1, and I think that Dan Azeez is 1 behind him in most of those. I know he's WBC 3, possibly WBA 2. You'd have to check that. So yeah, so in terms of the world rankings, Buatsi is normally one place above Dan Azeez, but according to BoxRec, Dan Azeez is our number one heavyweight, and being the reigning British, Commonwealth and European champion, it's only fair to say that's probably true. Also within his activity, Buatsi, he's not fought very often. His career hasn't really skyrocketed like we thought it would, like it probably did in the amateurs. It's kind of sort of just sluggishly made its way forward, but you'd question what really has gone on with his development in the pros, because it hasn't been what we thought he was going to be. We thought he would have been further ahead by now. It's definitely should have had much more fights. Dan Azeez, they both turned pro in 2017. Azeez is on 20 fights, and Josh Buatsi is on 13. So Josh Buatsi is on 17. So he's probably about 3 fights behind in his career than what he should be. So that's obviously been a bit of a shame to see, and I think that inactivity could possibly play a part in this fight, because one's been active and one hasn't. So in terms of their styles, Buatsi is known for his power. He's very well schooled. He's very disciplined. You can tell he's had a university education in the sport of boxing. You can tell that he doesn't really do many things wrong. His weaknesses are very few. He's got a fantastic jab. I mean, that's probably what he's best known for, his jab. The way that he can thrust it out with such speed and power and accuracy. So that is his best weapon. He's always looking to try and land his right hand. He can fight on the outside, he can fight mid-range. Against Craig Richards, they had a great fight. Craig Richards, I think, in that fight, was a little bit overwhelmed to start with, but then once he got his foot in, because he's known for being a distance fighter, he's not always that explosive off the start, but he took a little time to warm up and get used to him, and then he kind of took over a few of those last rounds. But that was obviously great experience for Buatsi, but then it did sort of highlight that Buatsi can be hit when he wants to try and trade with you, fight, 50-50, blow for blow. You can trade with him, you can exchange in equal measure. So it doesn't, so he sort of highlighted not so many weaknesses, but just a few sort of problems that boxers might think they're going to face with Buatsi, but they won't actually face these actual problems, because Craig Richards has kind of laid down the blueprint. He can be out jabbed on the outside. He can be outboxed on the inside. All of those things. So he's I think he didn't really have sort of weaknesses and chinks in the armour laid bare, but it just sort of gave glimpses as to this man isn't impenetrable, isn't that formidable, and isn't invincible. He's someone who, with the right style, the right game plan, and the right will, can be beaten. And the scorecards, I think, finished 115 to 113 on 2 of the judges' cards. So that just shows you he was taken right to the limit by Craig Richards. So somebody just as good as Craig Richards, who is definitely a world title level fighter. Because obviously, he's fought for world title against Dimitri Bivol, so he's definitely up at that level. So somebody as good as Richards, if not better, could definitely hand Buatsi with his first loss. So will Dan Azeez be the man to do that? Azeez, his physique, he looks like a mini Mike Tyson with his huge hunched shoulders. He's very stocky, sort of squat stature. There's a massive height difference between these two. Buatsi is over 6 foot, and I think Azeez is only 5'10", 5'11", and he's obviously a very compact, sort of not hunched over, but he's a very compact, tightly, stance that he adopts in the ring. He's not a stand-up tall fighter. He loves to come into range where he throws that overhand right, which is mastered. I mean, he's completed the overhand right course. That overhand right has knocked out so many of his opponents. His last opponent in the European title fight, Thomas Four, he hit him with the overhand right copiously, and I think the last one knocked him out on his feet. The referee did a great job to jump in there just at the right time, risking getting punched himself, to stop that fight before it could have gone on, because another punch could have been really dangerous. So yeah, full credit to the referee there. But he threw that overhand right Azeez, and he knocked him out cold on his feet. He was, you know, he was gone, completely gone, but still standing. So that overhand right is Azeez's best weapon. It's formidable. So in this fight, and I should mention that Buatsi's got 13 KOs from 17 fights, and I think Azeez has got the same 13 KOs but from 20 fights, so 3 more. So obviously there's a little bit of a difference in their KO ratio, with Buatsi obviously looking like he's got the edge in power. But yeah, his last 2 fights against Richards, and in his last fight against the IBF number 4, whose name escapes me, Pavel Stefian, he was taking a distance both times, looking a little like he's sort of met his match in terms of the level that he's currently at. Somebody who we thought was destined for world titles. Has he kind of, with the inactivity as well, has he kind of reached that level now where he's all starting to even out and he's not going through his opponents as quickly and easy as he will expect to do? That's a question. I'm not sure we'll see the answer to that soon. But also, yeah, he come up against 2, decent fighters in his last fight. Richards, who we know is tough as nails, and durable, and and stubborn. He's not somebody you can blast out of there. So yes, obviously it's hard to sort of envisage whether what that really means, because obviously Craig Richards is such a great fighter. I don't think anyone's going to have a good night against him, no matter what level you are. But yeah, I trying not to be too harsh. I do kind of feel like Buatsi's looked a little bit flat in his last couple of performances. I'd even go as far to say that I think sometimes he runs out of ideas as well. But I do think that maybe, I need to give him the benefit of the doubt. I do think I'm being slightly harsh when I say that. Azeez has got 6 KOs within his last 10 fights. So this guy is on a roll. He is in form. So if Buatsi can stop this guy or defeat Azeez, then that will go down as a massive career win. Because for anyone to beat Azeez in the form that he's in right now, it's going to take some doing. So just looking at the odds, I know Buatsi's the favourite at 3-10. That's with Betway Sports, and Dan Azeez is the underdog, 13-5, and the odds for a draw are 18-1. That's on its way to being low, but not completely low. I mean, something like 12-1, 14-1. That suggests that no one's expecting it to go the distance. But in this case, some people may expect this to go all the way. I mean, for a 50-50 fight, you would think that a draw would be really low, like 12-1 or something like that. Not that I know a lot about betting odds, but you'd think a 50-50 fight like this, with those odds not that low, sort of on its way to being low, but not that low, that's kind of suggesting that people don't think this is going to go the distance. One's going to knock out the other, but which way that's going to go is like I say, it's a 50-50 pick'em fight. So I think Buatsi would be best to sort of exchange on the outside, because his jab is his best weapon. It's probably better than Azeez's, even though Azeez's is a fantastic jab as well. One thing I want to question, in terms of their styles, will Buatsi have a harder time landing his jab, punching down on Azeez with his sort of compact, sort of shell? And will Azeez have a better time landing his jab by punching upwards, which is easier to do than punching down? So that's something that I'm really intrigued to see, but you're not going to know the answer to that until that first bell sounds. So that's something that I'm sort of thinking in the back of my mind. Buatsi is somebody who has one of the best jabs in the business, but when it comes to fight night, is it going to be possibly a little bit ineffective against someone who's so short compared to his stand-up tall height of over 6 foot? So I think that's something that I'm looking forward to finding out. Buatsi's jab also might not come into play as often as he'd like it to, because someone like Azeez is always going to be trying to step into mid-range to throw those overhand rights. So is Azeez going to be there on the outside, like Craig Richards was, to exchange those jabs with? If Azeez's game plan is going to, match his strengths, then you'd imagine no, Azeez is going to get in close and throw those overhand rights, which are absolute bombs that really, really stagger his opponents. So, yeah, the battle of the jabs is going to be interesting because sometimes it's almost a given that Buatsi is going to win those battle of the jabs, and that jab is going to wear his opponents down over time. And then he's going to be able to launch his right hand off that jab, so he sets up everything behind that amazing jab, that really stiff, accurate lance of a rod. But is he going to be able to do that against Azeez? That's a question that we're going to have to find out on fight night, but it's an interesting one. Now for me, I'm not sure if you've been able to tell by the tone of what I've been saying, but I really like both guys. Joshua Buatsi, I've been to a boxer event with him well before, so yeah, I could even be the one who sort of introduced him to boxer back in one of their first ever Ultimate Boxer tournaments years and years ago, and it was the light heavyweights where I think Shakan Peters won, which is somebody that Dan Azeez beat, one of his best names on his opponents, on his record. So yeah, we went to that show together, and yeah, sort of he was there obviously watching all the other light heavyweights in action at the time, and now he's gone full circle and he's now signed to Boxer, fighting on Sky Sports, because he didn't want to go with the DAZN platform with Matchroom, which is fair enough. He didn't see it working out as well as a TV channel like Sky Sports. So yeah, it's an interesting one. It's a real pick'em, real 50-50. When you listen to all the industry experts, professional boxers, especially the ones that know them quite well, like Chris Billum-Smith, who's only a cruiserweight, so only one weight above, none of them can put a name down. None of them want to commit to saying who's going to win and who won't. Denzel Bentley, I think, chose Dan Azeez. I think possibly because they might be better friends than what he is with Joshua Buatsi, so I think he's gone for his boy there. I'm going to do the same. So I've not met Dan Azeez, but I've met Joshua Buatsi. But I am going to go with Dan Azeez because I like an underdog story. I know he's only a slight underdog, but I do like the underdog story. And I also kind of think that perhaps his style might negate Joshua Buatsi. I think it's possible that his style could take away Buatsi's best weapon, his jab, straight away. And I think maybe with those overhand rights that he detonates, I'm sure Buatsi's going to be wise to them. He's obviously going to have done his homework, or his corner team will have. But he will land them. There's no doubt about it. He will land those overhand rights because they come almost from an unseen angle. So they will land at some point. I don't think it's going to be one punch knockout power, but maybe there'll be a kind of a gradual breaking down process where he lands them once or twice a round, and in round 6, 7, 8, 9, they might just start to have a bit of more of a stunning effect. But I think out of the two, because of the way they've come up, I'm not going to say Joshua Buatsi's had a hand on the plate because he's earned everything he's got, but Dan Azeez has had to grind on those small hall shows and work his way up to get onto the same level as Joshua Buatsi. So he's caught him up, and they're now literally on an even level. So yeah, Dan Azeez, the way that he's come up the hard way, out of the two of them, if one's going to bite down on their gum shield and say let's go, I think it could be Dan Azeez. So I'm going to pick Dan Azeez to win. I know I'm hedging my bets here and I'm being a bit of a cop-out, but I'm going to say either on points or a late knockout. But there's no question, I'm sure these two are going to be respectful of each other's power, and you kind of think, as friends, maybe they'll get into that first round and it might be a bit tentative, sort of biding their time, measuring, trying to gauge the other's distance. But then the way these two are aggressive and they like to step in close, you kind of think, what likelihood could that happen, that these two just sort of jab and sword fence on the outside? It literally just cannot happen. It can't happen. These two are going to step into range and they're going to throw bombs on each other. I'm sure of it. There's no way this could be a technical fight. It's going to be an absolute barnstorm of a firefight. And it could be whoever lands that big shot first or it could be like I said, which I'm sticking with my prediction, Dan Azeez to bite down on his gum shield and grind it out to either a late knockout or a points win. Thanks for listening.